It was excitement, it was intrigue, it was money, everything was instant. I wanted to be an armed robber, a criminal, a gunman, a shooter.
There's been a lot of trauma. As a young woman in my 20s, I looked down the barrel of a gun on many occasions.
When I got out of jail, I was just 10 times worse.
You go to prison to be rehabilitated, to be put back into society, to be a contributing member. You don't go to prison to meet other prisoners to come out a worse criminal, because that's all that happens.
The probation service is overwhelmed. The prison service is overwhelmed. The prison officers are overwhelmed. I'm not pointing the finger here. This system is broken.
Prisons across England and Wales are in crisis, filled to the brink, failing prisoners and the public.
The nation's crumbling prison service
is in crisis.
Stretched to breaking point.
It's like a sardine tin.
After serving their sentence, convicts have a right to rebuild their lives. But former prisoners say their time behind bars only leads them back into a life of crime.
It wasn't until you're either sitting in the hospital with no lungs, and thinking, when you're getting stabbed up and you're going to the floor, you're thinking, oh my God, I wish I never done that. Or you're in prison looking at 5 years, you're thinking, shh.
Shot 5 times, twice in the face. Marvin's criminal career is not for the faint-hearted. It started when he was a boy, when he was caught stealing sweets.
I would just remember just getting a white flash. It's like my dad punched me in my face, punch me, and then he dragged me down the hallway. He took me in the kitchen, put the cooker on, tick, 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 boom. And I thought, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then he just sort of put my hand over the fire. I was just thinking, how could you do this? I love you. Why are you burning my hand? Why are you burning my hand? And that was the defining moment. I actually believed that I wanted to be an armed robber, a criminal, a gunman, a shooter, because I wanted to get big enough, hard enough, and ready to deal with my father. And that was the beginning.
I regularly had guns held to my head because I was selling drugs. I've ended up in a wheelchair. I was 7 stone, I was nearly dead.
Gilly went to jail multiple times for drug offences and theft, stealing to fund her addiction.
I'm from a good family. I was well educated. I was not your typical addict, shall we say, but I very quickly became addicted to Class A drugs. Ultimately, it became very dark, very dangerous.
Like Marvin, Gilly was in and out of prison and is still scarred from the experience.
In that environment, I saw some horrific things. There were many women in there who were clearly suffering with extreme mental illnesses. People who've hung themselves in cells because of the isolation and the loneliness and being apart from their families. It was about locking you behind the door, giving you medication. That's it, really. They're too overwhelmed. The system's too overwhelmed.
You go to prison to be rehabilitated, to be put back into society, to be a contributing member. You don't go to prison to meet other prisoners to come out a worse criminal, because that's all that happens. You're all traumatised the same, so you all feel like family. It's madness.
Marvin had 21 convictions for 76 offences. He was stuck in a cycle of reoffending until 2008, when he was shot multiple times in a gangland attack and ended up in hospital.
I got better and I got through mentally, physically and spiritually. I'm building myself up from nothing. I'm coming back from a place of lack and I'm prepared to go through that.
He sought out help from charities and now is a mentor himself, using boxing to help people process their trauma.
So we've got to release up, built up frustration and built up energy. So what I try to do is keep them on the exercise and away from the drink, the party and the drugs.
A normal middle class person, they're not really going to understand me. I'm Luke Collins Walker and I'm 28 years old. I had a bit of a turbulent life. My dad died of a heroin overdose when I was 4, and then I had a bit of a hard upbringing, as you would say. I got involved in selling drugs at quite a young age. It was just on the road really from there. Went to prison, got involved in a lot of gang stuff, and then obviously I got attacked with a machete when I was 24, and obviously they broke my back and they left me completely blind.
Luke found it hard to get back on track after losing his eyesight and leaving prison.
When I got out of jail, I was just 10 times worse. I was still being a nightmare. I didn't really change my life at all. And then obviously when one of my brothers sent me a video on YouTube, he's like, oh, this geezer reminds me of you, he's got one eye and all that as well.
Again, like relax, don't just relax again, 1, 2. I do the boxing with Luke, you know what I mean? He's blind, yeah, so I'll just let him punch me because it releases his endorphins. Body shot. Although he looks like better than Melvin, his mouth, he was a horrible little sod when he was growing up.
The Justice Select Committee is heading an inquiry into how much support it gives offenders, both while they're serving their time and after they're released. It will look at directing more funds towards rehabilitation schemes, so places like this gym, which relies on volunteers, can help youth off the streets.
You won't see a kid who boxes fighting out on the street. It's very, very rare.
CJ's been the coach and he's been the moral compass. No matter what celebrity status you've got outside this gym, you come in this gym, he's the governor, mate, and he don't care about anything but respect, integrity, and good manners.
Andy Joshua's a little troublemaker. He got into trouble just around the corner from here. You know, look where he ended up. He's a role model to a lot of kids now. There's a story about everyone, like Marvin. We all can get through it, but the government needs to help us.
Reoffending is a big problem, and that's something that the government needs to address as part of its reforms.
Both Labour and the Conservatives say building new prisons is key. And the Tories have also pushed for tougher sentences for the worst offenders. Andy Slaughter is a senior MP who's leading the inquiry.
Lack of housing for people leaving custody, I mean, it just shouldn't happen. But in too many cases it does. And it's setting people up to fail. If you don't help people with that, and if people are coming out, particularly from a long prison sentence, they've become institutionalised. Everybody comes out of prison with a very few exceptions of the people who've committed the very worst crimes. And so we have to prepare people for that.
And that's the problem some charities are trying to tackle.
I'll do the cappuccino, there's another iced latte.
Switchback supports young men leaving prison. They helped 21-year-old Cyril get training at this bakery in London a couple of years ago. He's been there ever since.
Ellie? Most of my teenage hunt was mostly prison, so I would say I grew up in prison. The biggest adjustment is getting used to a regime which is prison, to being able to have that much freedom and then having to refine in that freedom.
What we really want is every young person who's at risk of ending up in a court to have the kind of mentoring support that we provide. That alone will significantly reduce the number of young people who end up in prison.
Sometimes you need someone to push you forward. It's hard to obviously make a change, but the most important thing is you're not going to create a life by having your life taken away.
Around half of the Switchback trainees are in full-time work or education within 12 months of leaving prison. And that's a crucial indicator that they'll be able to stay in that life, because having your own money and being able to live independently is the key driver behind not going back to prison. One of our biggest visions is a UK that really believes that everyone deserves a second chance. And I think if we could do that, our prison population would drop so quickly, we'd be closing jails instead of building them.
The majority of the prison population are male. Women make up just 4%. And out of more than 100 prisons across England and Wales, only 12 are female. But the challenges they face are vast.
The cycle that I ended up in was one of constantly using and trying to fight that addiction. I lived in an area called Hume. There was a lot of gunshots, a lot of people dying. Overdoses happened more or less every week, if not every day. And I was part of that. I ended up in a wheelchair for, I'd say, about a year. I spent a good 6 months in hospital with blood poisoning, and that was from my use of drugs and my lifestyle, where I wasn't eating enough, I was neglecting myself, awake for 24 hours constantly, and I was told I would never walk again. But I fought and battled, and I did walk again. There needs to be more gender-specific support, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. What works for a man does not work for a woman.
After getting out of jail and fighting her addiction, Jilly set out to help others like her. She now sits on a panel for a women's charity called Working Chance, which helps support people with convictions to find work and educational opportunities.
Prison is a traumatic experience. The rate of self-harm in women's prisons is really high and is escalating, which tells you so much about that experience of putting these vulnerable women, very often with poor mental health, into prison. And so it does absolutely nothing to rehabilitate. Perhaps they're escaping from a domestic violence situation or gang involvement previously. They need to find somewhere new to live. They're very likely to be reconnecting with children. So there's all sorts of things going on in their lives.
After I'd left the rehab, the first flat that I had, this beach was at the bottom of the road. It's been a massive part of my healing journey. I've always been obsessed with the ocean from being a little girl. It's my peace, really. The significant, pivotal moment for me was realising what I'm doing to my family and that I couldn't do this to them anymore. Today, I'm proud to say that I'm working in a field where I'm giving back in society, holding myself accountable. I was offered a job in a homeless hostel. I was only 18 months clean at the time. I'm still with that company today. And I could have left many times and gone somewhere else, but I actually feel really passionate about what I do. I have given many people jobs over the years on my team who do have a conviction or who do have addiction history, and they are the best workers.
As charities, organisations and ex-offenders themselves continue to pick up the pieces from a broken system, is there a way forward?
The probation service is a system that tries to do the best they can. However, they have not got enough people with lived experience to assist. Because you haven't lived in my shoes. That's why it fails. There need to be people in the positions that can empathise.
If I'd have had a mentor like Marvin from the beginning, I wouldn't be in the same position I am now, nowhere near. I wouldn't be blind, I wouldn't have all these issues as it is, but unfortunately I never had a male role model or anyone to help me out.
I'm crossing over here.
Often the problem that we have in this country is not what someone has done, but that they're not allowed to forget it and move on and make a difference in their life going forwards.
I think we can definitely learn from other jurisdictions of the way prisons work in other countries. That doesn't mean that punishment isn't an important part, but the objective should also be that when they come to the end of their sentence, that they are able to integrate better into society.
It's a service that needs a lot of support and investment, and probation officers need to have vastly reduced caseloads.
Today I can look in the mirror and be proud, be damn proud of what I've done and where I've come from. And I hope my family are too.
I have to live with my karma, and with what I'm doing now, hopefully it'll be giving enough back to the youngsters to replenish a little bit of the weight that I carry